We have divided this electrostatics into two chapters. The first one is electric charge and field. And the second one is electric potential and capacitance. Electric potential and capacitance. So electric charge and field is basically chapter number 1 of NCERT. And this electric potential and capacitance is chapter number 2 of NCERT. Yesterday, we started with chapter number 1, that charge and field. We have started electric charge. So in electric charge and field, we have discussed basics of electric charge. We have discussed basics of electric charges, like we have two types of charges, a positive charge and a negative charge. The SI unit of charge is coulomb. SI unit is coulomb. The CGS unit of charge is stat coulomb. CGS unit is stat coulomb. Sometimes it's known as electrostatic unit. It's also known as electrostatic unit. Electrostatic unit is ESU. So let's start with Coulomb's law. Now, Coulomb's law is totally independent of the topics that we have discussed in the last class. So even if you have missed first lecture, that won't affect Coulomb's law. So let's start with Coulomb's law. Coulomb's law says if you say you have two charges, a positive charge and a negative charge, you place a positive and negative charge together, then they will attract each other. If you place a positive charge and a positive charge, then these charges will repel each other. In the same way, if you take a negative charge and a negative charge, then these two charges will again repel each other. They attract or repel each other with a force. This force is known as electrostatic force. This Fe is electrostatic force. The Coulomb's law will tell you how to calculate this force. The Coulomb's law will give you the magnitude of this force. How would you calculate the force is given by Coulomb's law. So in around some 1768, in some 17th century, Coulomb's derived this law. So it's a very basic law. So you have a charge Q1 and a charge Q2. They are placed at a separation R. So the magnitude of force is independent of the fact that whether these charges are like or these charges are unlike charges. Both the charges could be like charges. They can have same magnitude, same nature, or they can be unlike, like one is positive and another one is negative. If they are like charges, then they will repel each other. If charges are unlike, then they will attract. So whatever the type of force is, nature of force, whether it is attractive or repulsive, that will not affect the magnitude of force that we will calculate using Coulomb's law. So Coulomb's law says, so according to Coulomb's law, electrostatic force, we can even say this is electric force between two charges. Electric force between two charges, F, is directly proportional to the product of charges. Means greater the values of Q1 and Q2, greater would be the magnitude of force. And this is inversely proportional to the square of distance between them. If you keep on increasing the magnitude, the separation between the charges, then force will decrease. It's inversely proportional to R square. So force is proportional to product of charges and inversely proportional to square of distance between them. So if you remove the sign of proportionality, you will get a constant K. So Fe is K Q1 Q2 divided by R square. So that is the magnitude of electric force. It's K Q1 Q2 by R square, where this K is constant of proportionality. Constant of proportionality. If you remember law of gravitation, you must have done gravitation in class 11. If you try to compare it with law of gravitation, the law of gravitation have exactly same structure as that of Coulomb's law. The law of gravitation says the force between two masses is G N1 N2 divided by R square. The only difference is instead of charges, you have masses in law of gravitation. Instead of electrical constant of proportionality, you have universal gravitation constant. Otherwise, the overall structure is same. So just like Newton's law of gravitation, this Coulomb's law says that force is proportional to the product of charges and inversely proportional to the square of distance between them, where is k is some constant of proportion. In different systems of unit, this k will have different values. If you are working in SI unit, then you can write your k as 1 over 4 pi epsilon. So just by looking at this expression, you will get an impression that force depends only over the charges and separation, nothing else, because A is a constant. But actually, so what do people think? That force depends only over charges and separation, or it depends upon medium too? Jubena, Fatma?
Medium too.
It depends on medium. Yeah. Force not only depends upon charge and separation, or it also depends upon the medium between the charges. So in SI unit, you can write this k is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. If I say this is equation number 1, this is equation number 1, and this is equation number 2. If I substitute 2 in 1, then electric force is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, it's Q2 divided by R square. So that is electric force 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught, Q1, Q2 by R square. See, this epsilon here is absolute permittivity. This epsilon is known as absolute permittivity. Now, just like refractive index of a medium, different mediums have different refractive index, like density. Different mediums have different density. Different mediums have different values of absolute permittivity. Like permittivity of air is different than a permittivity of water. So this force depends upon medium. The dependency of medium comes from this absolute permittivity. This is absolute permittivity of medium. It's different for different medium. This shows dependency of force on medium. Of force on medium. This shows how electric force depends on medium. The dependency of electric force on medium is given by absolute permittivity. Its value is totally different for different media. If you are writing epsilon naught, then this naught in particular will represent air. If I write epsilon naught, that means this is absolute permittivity. This is absolute permittivity of free space. When I say free space, that means it's either air or vacuum. This is absolute permittivity of free space. Free space means it's either air or vacuum. That's epsilon naught. The value of epsilon naught is 8.85 into 10 raised to the power minus 12. Okay, can you guess the unit of epsilon naught from this expression?
C by A.
No. Listen, Fatma, it's easy to calculate the unit. Like I'm doing this in rough area. Fatma, you can calculate the value of epsilon naught from here, right? You can calculate the value of epsilon naught from here. So you can write your epsilon naught as it's Q1, Q2 over 4 pi K R square. So is it clear for both of you? I just cross multiply. So just one more thing. It's SI unit of charge, Coulomb, right? So it would be Coulomb square. In denominator, you have 4 pi R square. 4 and pi are numbers, they are unitless. What is unit of R square separation? SI unit of R. Yeah, so it would be meter square. What about force? SI unit of force? SI unit of force?
Newton.
So the combined is Coulomb square per meter square per Newton. So this is the SI unit of epsilon naught, Coulomb square per meter square per Newton. And this value is only for free space. If you have another medium, let's say you place your charges in water, and the value of absolute permittivity of water is almost 80 times greater than that of free space. If you wish to calculate epsilon naught of water, then that is 80 into 8.85 into 10 raised to the power minus 12. Different mediums have different values of absolute permittivity. Different mediums would have different values of absolute permittivity. So the dependency of force on medium mathematically is given by this absolute permittivity. That's why this is important. Whenever we write epsilon naught, that means we have fixed the medium. The medium is free space. Whenever you have placed a naught along with epsilon, that means you have fixed the medium. The medium is free space. From this simple equation, you can get a conceptual question that you take two charges. the charges Q1 and Q2. You first place those charges in air at a fixed separation. Then you place same charges at the same separation in water. This is air and this is water. I'm repeating it again. You take two charges, place them in air, then you place the same charges in water. Can you just compare the force between the two charges in air and water? Which one is greater? It's air or water? Just by this expression and this discussion.
In water.
In water. Jovena, the absolute permittivity of water is greater than that of air. So while calculating force in water, in denominator, while calculating force in air, the term in denominator is epsilon naught. But while calculating for water, the term in denominator is this one. So in denominator, the absolute permittivity of water is greater than that of air. So if you keep on increasing the value of denominator, then overall fraction will keep on decreasing. So force in water should be less than force in air. It's because epsilon W is greater than epsilon naught and they are inversely proportional. Next, so the expression for force between two charges is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, it's Q2 divided by R square. The name of this symbol is epsilon. The way you call this as theta, you call this angle as phi, this is eta. The name of this particular symbol is epsilon. It's a Greek symbol. This is epsilon. In majority of numerical, you will need the value of 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. K is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. So let's calculate this value. This is 1. Pi is 3.14. Epsilon naught is 8.85 into 10 raised to the power minus 12. This comes out to be, it's 9 into 10 raised to the power 9. So the value of K is 9 into 10 raised to the power 9. And its unit is, it's Newton. You can calculate the unit of this 1 by epsilon naught now. 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught is K. So the unit is force, just multiply with R square. So it's meter square. Divide here with this Q1, Q2. So this is per coulomb square. So you can use this value of K directly in numericals, 9 into 10 raised power 9 Newton meter square per coulomb square. So that is Coulomb's law for calculating force in meter. But this formula is an SI unit. If you are taking CGS unit, okay, just tell me what is the CGS unit of mass? Okay, SI unit of mass.
kg.
CGS, gram. CGS unit of mass is gram. What about the SI unit of length?
Meter.
Meter. What about the CGS?
Centimeter.
CGS is centimeter. Time, SI unit of time, second. CGS unit of time, seconds. SI unit of force is Newton. What about the CGS unit of force? CGS of force is dyne. It's known as dyne. So if you are calculating this Coulomb's law in CGS unit, then in CGS unit, the value of K comes out to be 1. In SI unit, the value of K is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. But if you are taking CGS unit, then this K will come out to be 1. So if I substitute K equal to 1, then expression will be, this is K now. In CGS, this K is 1. So the expression of force is only Q1, Q2 by R square. But you will never use CGS unit throughout your syllabus. Your entire syllabus is in SI unit. Your entire syllabus is in SI unit. You will never use CGS anywhere. Your entire syllabus is in SI unit. The next is, there are some characteristics of Coulomb's law. Few characteristics of Coulomb's law. The first one is, Coulomb's law is valid only for a point charge. Point charge means charge is distributed over a body, which is just a point. There's no dimensions of the body. There's no size, radius of body, area of body, volume of body. Body is just a point. So the first characteristic is, it is valid only for point charge. If it is valid only for point charge or sphere. You can use Coulomb's law either for a point charge or for a sphere. You cannot use it for objects of finite size. Say if I take this pen and this hand, let's assume that this pen is positively charged, hand is negatively charged. Then both will attract each other with electric force. But you cannot calculate that electric force directly using Coulomb's law. The result is this pen is not a point charge, this hand is not a point charge. You can use Coulomb's law only if both the objects are point charges. So it's valid only for point charges or sphere. Second characteristic. For using Coulomb's law, either both the charges should be at rest So when you are using Coulomb's law, then both the charges, the best case is if both the charges are at rest, then you can use Coulomb's law. Or at least one of them is at rest. One of them is at rest with separation between charges is constant. So the first characteristic is you can use Coulomb's law only if both the charges are point charges or both the charges are spherical body. The second is for using Coulomb's law, both the charges, let's say it's charge number 1, this is charge number 2. Both the charges should be at rest. If they are at rest, then you can use Coulomb's law. Or one of them is moving around it. So either both the charges should be at rest, but if you're saying that one charge is moving, then one should be at rest, another should be moving, but the separation between the charges should not change. This charge cannot move in this way. It cannot move in this way that the separation between the charges varies. The second charge is moving, it should move in the way that the separation between the charges is fixed. So the only possibility is one is at fixed point, another one is revolving around. Then only you can use Coulomb's law. But if a charge is moving in this direction, so that separation varies between the charges. You can never use Coulomb's law in this particular condition. So you will use Coulomb's law either if both the charges are at rest, or one of the charges at rest and another one is revolving around, so that the separation between them is fixed. Then only you can use Coulomb's law. So these are two characteristics of Coulomb's law. Then there are some characteristics of electric force. Characteristics of electric force. The first characteristic is it is conservative. Conservative force means, so what do you mean by conservative force? If I'm saying that electric force is conservative, the entire concept of potential and potential energy depends on this conservative nature. It is conservative. So conservative force means force, say conservation of energy, conservation of charge, and conservative force is a totally different concept. When we say that force is conservative, conservative force means that is work done is independent of path. Work done is independent of path. So if you're saying that particular force is conservative, that means that force is, the work done by that force is independent of path. So I'm taking this charge Q from point A to point B. If I'm saying that electric force is conservative, then if you take this charge from A to B by this path, path 1, or if you take this Q from A to B by this path, path 2, or if you take this charge from A to B by this path, path 3, in all paths, work done is same. If work done is independent of path, then you will say that force is conservative. And this is one important concept. These are the conservative forces for which the concept of potential energy can be used. The concept of potential energy is valid only for conservative. You cannot use the concept of potential energy for non-conservative force. Yes, Fatma, in this case, the distance doesn't matter. The thing that only matters is the initial and the final position. The only thing that matters here is initial and the final position. The distance doesn't matter. Even if you take this charge from A to B using this particular path, the work is the same. Then why do we calculate R? That R we were calculating was for force, right? Force depends on R, but here it's work done which is independent of R. Like I'm not saying that force is independent of R. Even in conservative force, force depends upon separation. But here work done is independent of R. When you will calculate work done, which is integral of electric force dot dr from point A to point B. This will remain same for different path until initial and final conditions are same. So Fatima, is it clear? Force depends on R. I'm not saying that force is independent of R, but the work done here is independent of R. That's the conservative.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Entire second chapter starts with the conservative nature of electric force, the concept of potential and potential energy. They are varied only for conservative. The next is, it is central force. Conservative force is a central force. Central force means it acts along the line. It acts along the line joining the centers of sphere. So if you have, this is center to center force, like if you have two spheres, two charged spheres, if I say this is sphere number 1 and this is sphere number 2, if both the spheres are charged, this is plus Q1, this is plus Q2, center to center separation is R. So this electric force will act along the line joining their centers. So this is where the electric force will act. Right? The electric force will act along the line joining the charges, joining the center of these spheres. So these types of forces are known as central forces. Let's start with some basic numericals on Coulomb's law. The first question is a very simple question, like two charges of 3 millicoulomb and 5 microcoulomb are placed at separation. Let's keep it minus, at a separation of 3 mm. Calculate force between them. Calculate force between them. Force between them. If medium is not mentioned, that means a medium is free space. So it's simple application of this formula. F is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, Q2 by R square. So this is the easiest question of this class. Just calculate the magnitude. And don't forget to convert this thing. Like, don't forget to convert millicoulomb into coulomb and microcoulomb into coulomb. Okay. So just check your calculations. The first charge is 3 millicoulomb. Millicoulomb means that's 3 into 10 raised to the power minus 3 coulomb. The second one is minus 5 microcoulomb, which is minus 5 into 10 raised to the power minus 6 coulomb. The separation between them is 3 mm, which is 3 into 10 raised to the power minus 3 meter. If I substitute these values, here 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught is simply 9 into 10 raised to the power 9. Q1 is 3 into 10 raised to the power minus 3. Q2 is 5 into 10 raised to the power minus 6 divided by R square, which is 3 into 10 raised to the power minus 3, the whole square. Remember, while calculating magnitude of force, we can skip this negative sign. This negative sign will show that force is attractive. It will help in calculation of direction of force, but while calculating magnitude, we can skip this negative sign. So the force is, so it's 9 into 15. I'm just multiplying this 3 and 5. 10 raised to the power 9 minus 3 minus 6. So that's 10 raised to the power 0. Divided by 9 into 10 raised to the power minus 6. So this 9 will cancel this 9. And the force is 15 into 10 raised to the power 6 Newton. The next question is, two charges, Q1 and Q2, are placed at a separation A they repel each other. They repel each other with force F. They repel each other with a force F. Just calculate force if magnitude of both charges becomes 3 times and separation is 1 by 3 times. So I'm just giving a hint. This is charge Q1 and this is Q2. Initially, they are placed at a separation A. So they just repel each other with some force F. Now you make their magnitudes 3Q1 and 3Q2 and the separation becomes A by 3. Now you're supposed to calculate force F prime. Your F prime should be in terms of F, like F prime could be double of F, it could be half of F, thrice of F. Just try calculate F prime in terms of F. So in the first case, your force is, it's 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, it's Q2 over A square. You can even write this as it's K, it's Q1, it's Q2 over A square. That's equation number 1. Q1, Q2 over A square. Then in the second case, you can write your F prime as it's 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. This is thrice of Q1 multiplied by thrice of Q2 divided by separation is A by 3 square. It's A by 3 whole square. So your F prime is, it's 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's 9 Q1 Q2 over A square by 9. Now this 9 will come to numerator and this F prime will be, it's 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's 81 Q1 Q2 over A square. That's equation number 2. Now you can divide this one into. I think Jabena got the right answer. So just divide 1 into. When you divide 1 into, you will get F is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, it's Q2 over R square divided by F prime, which is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's 81 Q1 Q2 over A square. Sorry, separation is A not R. This gets cancelled out. Q1 Q2 gets cancelled out. A square gets cancelled out with A square. So this will be F over F prime is 1 by 81. If you cross multiply them, you will get F prime is 81. In the next question, I will use a concept of class 11, that is the concept of centripetal force. We will use the concept of centripetal force. So will you tell me what is centripetal force? When do we require the centripetal force? See, we use the concept of centripetal force when body is moving in a circular path. So this is center, the radius of the path is r. A body of mass m is moving in this circular path with a velocity v. So body is moving with a velocity v in this circular path of radius r. So the centripetal force acting on the body is, basically when this body moves on the circular path, direction of its velocity will change. This is the direction of velocity at this point. When body comes at this point, the direction of velocity will be this. When body will come at this point, the direction of velocity will be this. So throughout the circular path, the direction of velocity will keep on changing. So you need a force which will change the direction of velocity. It's Newton's first law, body law of inertia. Like body cannot change its direction of velocity on its own. To change the direction of velocity, it will need a force. So to change the direction of velocity in a circular path, it will need centripetal force. So centripetal force is force required by body to move on circular path. To move on circular path. So if a body wants to move on a circular path, it will need a force which is known as centripetal force. The magnitude of centripetal force is mv square by r. or you can even write this as m omega square. V is velocity. Here, omega is angular velocity. Is angular velocity. And the direction of centripetal force is, its direction is along the radius towards the center. Its direction is along the radius towards the center. So see some examples, like planets are revolving around the sun. So to revolve around the sun, planets need centripetal force. That centripetal force is provided by the gravitational force between sun and planet. Just like planets, moon is revolving around the earth. So to revolve around earth, moon needs centripetal force, and that centripetal force is given by electric force between moon and planet. In the same way, electrons are revolving around the nucleus. So to revolve around nucleus, electrons would need centripetal force. So these are the forces, these are the cases in which system needs centripetal force. So whenever a body is moving on a circular path, so to move on a circular path, body needs a force which is centripetal force. Its magnitude is mv square by r or m omega square by r. The direction of the centripetal force is always like here. The centripetal force is towards the center. Here too, the centripetal force is towards the center. The centripetal force always acts along the radius towards the center of the path. So the next question is, a particle of mass m, and carrying charge minus q1 is moving around the charge q along a circular path of radius r. Calculate time period of revolution of charge minus q about q. Okay, we will solve this numerical together. So you have a charge minus q2. So this is charge q2. Around this charge q2 in a circle of radius r, a charge minus q1 is revolving around. Okay, Jubena. Let's say the velocity of minus q1 is v. So what is the centripetal force required by its mass is m? Jubena, what is the centripetal force required by minus q1?
mv by r.
It was mv square by r. No? Just check the last. You just have done, no? It's minus mv square by r. So fine. So the centripetal force required by minus q1 is mv square by r. Now, Fatma, which force will provide centripetal force? The electric force, right?
Yeah.
The electric force between q2 and minus q1 will provide electric force. So, Jumena, what should be the magnitude of electric force here? Jumena, the magnitude of electric force between q1 and q2. What's the magnitude?
1 by 4 pi epsilon.
Right.
Into minus q1 into q2.
Right.
By r square.
So that is the electric force between two charges, k q2 by r square. Instead of 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught, I'm just using k. Now, this centripetal force is provided by electric force. So electric force will provide centripetal force. So you can write this as that centripetal force will be equal to electric force. We can equate them. Centripetal force is mv square by r. electric force is K Q1 Q2 over R square. This R will cancel this R. So you will get V square is K Q1 Q2 over M. So
Sir, it's R and R square. How will they cancel each other?
yeah, there is one R left, right? There is one R. So your V is, it's root over, it's K Q1 Q2 over R. So this is the velocity with which this minus Q1 will revolve around Q2. Now, say that is my equation number 3. We can even write velocity as distance upon time. We can even write speed as speed or magnitude of velocity as distance upon time. So will tell me, Juvena, what is the distance covered by minus Q1 in one complete revolution?
360.
Distance, not angle. The radius of path is R. What is the distance covered by minus Q1 in
R.
one complete revolution? That would be 2 pi R, right? It's distance. The distance covered in one complete revolution is equal to circumference of the circle. And the time taken to complete one revolution is time period capital. Here T is time period. Here T is time period. So from here, you can write that your T is 2 pi R over V. So time period simply means time taken to complete one revolution. That's equation number 4. So in this numerical, you are supposed to calculate time period. So time period comes out to do 2 pi R by V. You have the value of V from equation number 3. Just substitute 3 and 4 and get the value of V. When you substitute them, this T will be 2 pi R over V, where V is root over, it's K Q1 Q2 over Rm. You can simply take this root over Rm into numerator. It won't get cancelled out, it will get added up. So that's 2 pi R, it's root over Mr by K Q1 Q2. Okay, in the next step, you can take this 2 pi R inside the root. If you take this 2 pi R inside the root, then it will get square. If you take 2 pi R inside the root, then this will be 2 pi R square Mr by K Q1 Q. So just square it. So the time period will be, it's root over, it's 4 pi square R square Mr divided by K Q1 Q. So this is the time period. Okay, for next numerical, let's start with dielectric constant and relative permittivity. Dielectric constant and relative permittivity. Relative permittivity. Now, this dielectric constant and relative permittivity will help in calculating force in mediums other than free space. Till now, we have done all numericals for free space only. But if your charges are placed in some other medium, like it's placed in water or in some other medium, then you will use these two concepts, the dielectric constant and that of relative permittivity. So see how will you use them. This is free space. In free space, you place a charge Q1 and a charge Q2 at a separation. So the force between the charges in air is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, it's Q2 over R square. That's my first equation. Now I place the same charges in some other medium. Maybe it would be water, or in some other medium, I place the same charges Q1 and Q2. The separation is same, I just have changed the medium. So will you tell me what will be the change in formula? Which term will change in this formula, the formula of force?
Epsilon will change.
Epsilon will change. So instead of epsilon naught, you will use epsilon. It's Q1, Q2 over R square. That's equation number. Here this epsilon is absolute permittivity of medium. Is absolute permittivity of medium. You can left your answer here, right? You can write your force in terms of absolute permittivity. But in majority of numericals, absolute permittivity is not given. The thing which is given is dielectric constant or relative permittivity. If this absolute permittivity of a medium is given, then you can easily calculate the force in that medium. But generally, absolute permittivity is not given. what you have is dielectric constant or relative permittivity. So this dielectric constant or relative permittivity is epsilon by epsilon naught equal to epsilon r. This ratio of absolute permittivity of medium and absolute permittivity of free space is known as epsilon r, which is relative permittivity. So you have ratio of epsilon and epsilon naught, absolute permittivity of medium, absolute permittivity of free space, which is relative. Or you can define the same ratio of epsilon and epsilon naught as K, where K is the dielectric constant. So mathematically, the dielectric constant and relative permittivity are the same thing. Now, don't get confused with the K, which we have substituted as 1 over 4 epsilon naught. This K and this K are different. These two Ks are different. That's why I wasn't using K in the earlier calculation. Earlier, this K was 1 over 4 epsilon naught, but this K is now dielectric constant. So you can write this epsilon as K times epsilon naught, and I call this as equation number 3. So this K and epsilon are like dielectric constant and relative permittivity are the same quantities. Just the notations are different, that's it. Both are unitless, both have same values. So we can use any one of them. I'm using dielectric constant, epsilon is K epsilon naught. If I substitute equation number 3 into, if I substitute 3 into, then you will get that force in medium is 1 over 4 pi K epsilon naught, it's Q1, it's Q2 over R square. That is force in medium. So if you want to calculate force, and this K is dielectric constant. So if you want to calculate force between two charges in any particular medium, then just multiply denominator with the dielectric constant of that particular medium. Now in this expression, this whole 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. This is equation number 4. This whole is force in air, right? 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square is force in air. So if we substitute equation number 1 and 4, then you will get that the force between the charges in medium is 1 over that force in air divided by the dielectric constant of the medium. This whole is force in air, so force in medium in force in air by K. So you can simply write that the force between two charges in medium is less than force in air. Whenever you place two charges in a medium other than free space, the force will decrease. If you, we have discussed that in the starting of the lecture. If you place two charges in air, the force is F. If you place the same charges in water, then force will decrease. The force in a medium is always less than the force in air. From here, you can even write your K as force in air divided by force in medium. This is another definition of K dielectric constant. Dielectric constant can also be defined as the ratio of force between two charges in air to the force between the same charges in medium. Next, you will need a dielectric constant of some basic medium. Like value of dielectric constant is 1 for free space. When I say free space, that means it's either air or vacuum. The value of dielectric constant is 80 or 81. It's basically 80 point something. So some authors use as 80 or 81. This is for water. The value of dielectric constant is infinite for conductors. If you have a conducting medium, then that for that conducting medium, the dielectric constant is infinite. In general, your K is greater than or equal to 1. Usually, for neutral mediums, the value of K is not less than 1. Its value is less than 1 for plasma or plasma type mediums which are charged medium. But in your syllabus, we will not deal with charged medium. We will deal with only neutral medium. And for neutral medium, the value of K is greater than or equal to 1. Now, can you predict the force between two charges in conductor? So what will happen to force between two charges if I place them in a conducting medium? Let's say mercury. I take two charges and place those two charges in mercury. What do people think? What should be the force between the charges in mercury?
Infinite.
Infinite. It should be infinite or it should be 0?
0.
It should be 0. This will be 1 over 4 pi infinity epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. 1 by infinite is 0. The dielectric constant is coming in denominator. So in denominator, the value of K is infinite. So 1 by infinite would be 0. So force between two charges in conductor is 0. So if you place two charges in conductor, then they won't attract or repel each other. Okay, let's start with a simple numerical. Two charges, Q1 and Q2, are placed at a separation R. At a separation R. They repel each other with a force F. They repel each other with force F. At what separation? At what separation? They must be placed in a medium of dielectric constant 4, or let's say dielectric constant is 5, K is 5, so that force remains same. Force remains same. Say, let's start with two charges. This is charge Q1, this is charge Q2. They are placed at a separation R. That is a free space. They repel each other with a force. Now, another medium, the dielectric constant of the medium is 5. He's saying at what separation X you should place the charges so that force does not change, force remains same. So basically you have to connect this X with R. So the method is first calculate force in this particular medium, then calculate force in this particular medium and take ratio. From that ratio you can get the relation between X and R. Okay, let's say when the charges are in free space, then the force is, it's 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught, it's Q1, it's X squared by R squared. Okay, let's check. Q2 by R squared. That's first equation. When the charges are placed in medium, then the force is again F. Force is not changing, force is same. It's 1 over 4 pi K epsilon naught. It's Q1, it's Q2 over X squared. That's second equation. This is second equation. You can simply equate equation number 1 and 2. You can simply equate 1 and 2. So we'll get 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught. It's Q1, Q2 over R square. 1 over 4 pi K epsilon naught. It's Q1, Q2 over X square. 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught, say 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught here. Q1, Q2 will cancel this Q1, Q2. So we are left with only 1 by R square is 1 by Kx square. So X square is R square over K. So your X is R over root K. K is 5, so X will be R over root 5. So at this separation, in a medium of dielectric constant 5, force will not change.